I think we're live on Substack Live. You got Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News. You got Michael Popok, Legal AF, together again. I promised you we do it every week, at least once a week with Adam. And here we are. We got an amazing thing to talk about here, Adam, because I think it is the blueprint for the future that you and I are going to talk a lot about, which is vindictive prosecution motions being filed against the Trump Department of Justice. We know the Department of Justice is the most vindictive we've ever seen. I call it the most corrupt in history. But now we've got two separate motions to dismiss indictments under Rule 12 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure for vindictive prosecution, which is a term of art. It is a concept. We'll talk more about it here on this live as people kind of come together with us here. One filed by Monica
Monica MacGyver, yes,
MacGyver, right?
Congresswoman.
Congresswoman from my home state of New Jersey, after she was arrested and indicted along with the mayor of Newark, Mayor Baraka. Mayor Baraka's charges for trespass and other things, when all they were doing was doing their oversight duties over a federal detention center that was in Delaney Hall, present in Newark, that there was a lot of First Amendment objection to it and speech about it. And they went down to do their tour, and he got arrested. She got arrested. His indictment got dismissed. Alina Habba got embarrassed by a federal magistrate judge over that, being told you must do better, you need to do better. And now you've got this continued indictment, though, against a sitting member of the House of Representatives, and a motion that she has filed for vindictive prosecution. And then just yesterday, Kilmer Abrego Garcia, following suit, filed his motion for vindictive prosecution, laying out very eloquently and very convincingly in his motion that he has been the target and the subject and the victim of a retribution campaign orchestrated by Trump and its Department of Justice, since starting with his illegal removal to El Salvador, his torture upon arrival, his obtaining justice, we thought, in a Maryland federal court by way of Judge Zinnes, and winning with her and up to the United States Supreme Court 9-0, and yet being indicted under some BS bullshit, we're on live Substack, bullshit manufactured indictment for something that happened 3 years ago, as a charade, a smokescreen to bring him back, but have him be indicted in Tennessee. And those two things came to a head. But I think the talking point here for you and me, and I'll turn it over to you now, is when you have a vindictive administration, which is controlling a vindictive and corrupt as a tool Department of Justice, but it's led by people who, because of who they work for, need to speak out loud politically to support him. And they have to bash in public Abrego Garcia. They have to bash LaMonica MacGyver. This is therefore the gift that goes for the evidence to support the very motions to dismiss the vindictive and dismiss the indictments under vindictiveness that the defense counsel need, right?
Right. I mean, look, I've seen a lot of vindictive and selective prosecution motions in my time, and they're really hard to do because usually in a typical administration, you don't hand them a bunch of material of here's me appearing on cable news, saying that I'm going to go after you because of this. The crux of Kilmer Abrego Garcia's motion is that the government's going after him for having the audacity to fight back. And one of the citations in his motion, he points to Todd Blanche going on Fox News saying that, well, we need to go ahead because a judge questioned our decision. That is one of his citations. And now Todd Blanche...
Stop right there. Stop right there. The number two in the Department of Justice goes on television and tells the world that the reason they indicted Kilmer Abrego Garcia is because what?
Is because the judge questioned. Let me read the actual passage here. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche went on television to say the government began investigating Mr. Abrego only after a judge in Maryland ... questioned the government, and quote, the government's decision to deport him.
That alone proves it. That alone proves it. That approves the retaliation and the vindictiveness. We wouldn't have indicted him if Judge Zinnes had ruled in our favor about the constitutional violations. But since she didn't, we had no choice but to pay her back and pay him back by indicting him.
Now, you have another jaw-dropping appearance by Todd Blanche in the LaMonica MacGyver motion. And this is incredible because folks remember the kind of heavily distorted footage that was released by the Department of Homeland Security saying, oh, she touched a federal officer, that's assault, and we're going to charge her with the same statute that we leveled against the rioters who they now call national heroes. But if you look at Todd Blanche's appearance in that, there is other footage obtained during discovery that apparently shows one of the federal agents saying that we're going to arrest the mayor, Mayor Baraka, per the orders of the deputy attorney general. So this is one. Did you order the code red? Yes,
Yeah.
I got the job. This was a few good men.
Is this Santiago?
drama.
This is Santiago.
Yes, absolutely. This is Colonel Jessup. This is a made for cinema moment you don't usually get. It's usually very difficult to prove that the government is really weaponizing the Department of Justice against you for an untoward reason. There's a lot of deference granted to the government. But in these cases, the government keeps going on Fox News. In the case of Congresswoman MacGyver, you have Alina Habba, the top prosecutor, now special attorney because she can't get confirmed by the Senate or approved of by the judges of her district, going on a right-wing podcast saying we're going to turn New Jersey red. These are the sort of citations you usually can't get for a vindictive prosecution motion.
Well, let's use as an example when Trump raised the issue about vindictive prosecution and made all sorts of allegations in public and in social media about Joe Biden is calling the shots with Jack Smith, and it's the Biden administration that's forcing this prosecution. It's vindictive. And then even when Judge Chutkin and others gave him the opportunity to explore some of that in discovery, there was nothing because those conversations, those meetings, those instructions never happened. And by the way, which is it? Was Biden a bumbling fool that didn't know where he was half the time? Or was he the grand orchestrator of all the indictments against Donald Trump? You can't have it both ways. But there was zero evidence. But what Adam's telling our audience here in this briefing is that when you look at the motions, and I'll post them on Legal AF Substack today so you can take a look, it's just replete with dozens and dozens of hyperlink citations to this appearance on a podcast and this Fox News interview and this social media post. So you're right that and I've been a criminal, and a federal trial lawyer for a long, long time. You can count on like two fingers the amount of dismissals I've been able to obtain with other people on vindictive prosecution in my entire career. But I never had this mother lode of evidence being generated. But the good news is this administration takes its tone from the top, which is Donald Trump, and he thinks there's nothing wrong. In fact, he demands in his fealty to the Department of Justice that they make appearances on right-wing media, that they go on social media, that they go on podcasts. That's part of their job. And therefore, criminal defense lawyers are saying, bring it, talk more, post more, because I've never seen between the two motions, I've never seen a better supported motion for vindictive prosecution using their own words against them in my entire career than these are being filed. And just for our audience, this is the reason we're spending so much time on this live Substack and on some videos we've done over on Legal AF is because this is not the last time you're going to hear about this with this administration. Because if they go after Adam Schiff with any kind of indictment for mortgage fraud, the senator from California, or AG Letitia James in New York, or Bill Clinton or Obama, you're going to be seeing motions for vindictive prosecution. You may even see them before the indictments come out, although that's quite unusual. Listen, while you're all here, we now got a nice audience of 500 people. There's a bubble up at the top on the left. And if you tap it, you'll be able to subscribe for both Adams All Rise News and here on Legal AF. I always forget that people that come to these lives sometimes are not subscribers, even though, we send it out in various ways. So this is the way you can help. If you love Adams content, which I know you do, and if you love the Legal AF work, support us by becoming subscribers. And if you can swing it, I don't want to be glib, but I think it's like the cost of a cup of Starbucks coffee, depending upon how you take it. Once a month, become a paid subscriber to our two Substacks, and you'll get some exclusive content there as well. Okay, Adam, you've done a great job. You just did a hot take about the MacGyver one. And there's also some other things, as long as we got you here. You are an expert on all things Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, having literally sat through the trials there. There's some developments there. And we got another motion that's pending. We're waiting for a ruling about Alina Habba. Speaking about her, your pick. Which one do you want to do first?
We can talk about all of it. I mean, right now, there's so much happening with Epstein because of everything going on in the Oversight Committee. We could start seeing documents coming into the Congress by Friday. And it's the same day. Mark your calendars. Friday is both the anticipated release date of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who we've been talking about, and the release date of the files. Now, not publicly, so far as we know, but the DOJ is actually starting to comply, or so the story goes, with the House Oversight Committee's subpoena, and that's supposed to start happening on Friday. So it's going to be a heavy news day then.
Which leads me to believe that this has all been an orchestrated, obviously, between once the Department of Justice got caught in February not releasing all of the files, and now we're already here almost in September. It looks like they're using the Oversight Committee to sort of slow roll this and, sort of cook it a little bit, and things come out. And if they don't come out, it's because they can blame the Oversight Committee. This doesn't look like, I don't want people I don't think our audience would, our overlapping audience would, but think like, oh, the Oversight Committee is finally doing. No, this is all the MAGA on there. Yes, the Democrats were able to convince them to do some subpoenas and do some other work, but this is all a pitch and catch, a horse and pony show arranged by the White House to give them cover. Oh, well, we turned it over. We turned it, and it was, you didn't get it. It's because they didn't produce it to you. It's not our fault. And now pass the buck over to Congress in that way. At the same time, there's lawsuits that have been filed, including by Democracy Forward, who's with us over on Legal AF YouTube channel. But they have a pending FOIA, Freedom of Information Act case with a summary judgment pending in front of Judge Chutkin, of all people, who was presided over Donald Trump's criminal cases. So there's multiple ways we could start getting this information out. But all it should demonstrate to the American people that Donald Trump has had and has no intention to make good on his campaign promise or any of the promises he made when he took office to release in their entirety, except for redactions for victim protection purposes, the Epstein files, none whatsoever. And I love the fact that the victims, who often get lost here in the storytelling, not by us, but in the mainstream media, they've stepped forward in social media and other places, besides lawsuits that they've filed to vindicate their own rights. But they've come forward and said, I saw a picture of 10 or 12 of them that said, we are not a hoax. Because Donald Trump continues to tell the American people that it's all an Epstein hoax, like a Russia hoax. It's not. It's 1,000 or more people who were sexually abused, many of them as children, by best friends of Donald Trump named Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And that's not a hoax, and our commander-in-chief shouldn't be saying that. What's going on with the Alina Habba motion that's pending that you and I covered a couple of weeks ago?
So Alina Habba her title right now is special attorney. It's not U.S. attorney because when she was appointed interim U.S. attorney, that's usually for a small period of time until she is confirmed by the Senate or having her term extended by the federal judges. Well, that never happened. Today, we may get a ruling by a federal judge in Pennsylvania, sitting by designation, of a challenge brought by two criminal defendants who say that she is illegitimately appointed. We can find out whether a federal judge agrees her term is illegitimate. And if so, how could that compromise or not compromise some of the criminal cases on her docket? Now, in this case, I believe it's a drug and firearms case.
Yeah.
Giraud is the last name
Yeah.
of the defendants, U.S. v. Giraud. They are not going to, their indictment isn't going to be dismissed because their case was brought before the period where she stayed in her office without judicial or Senate
Hmm.
confirmation.
Yeah. It was an
But
indictment from several years ago. Yeah.
right. Well, think of the ramifications, though. If the judge says her term is illegitimate, so her team is disqualified from this case, but the case continues. Well, what does that mean for every other case that's brought forward? So I think a lot of people kind of watching what's happening with these special attorneys. Alina Habba isn't alone. All over the country, I've counted at least 4 U.S. attorneys by Trump in the
Yep.
Northern District of New York, District of New Jersey, District of Nevada, Central District of California. All of them following this trajectory of their interim U.S. attorneys. The Senate doesn't confirm them. The judges won't extend their terms. They stay in office because Trump doesn't care.
Well, and right, and the only one where he got extended by the judges was no surprise, Jay Clayton, who worked in the New York Southern District of New York office, had been the Securities and Exchange Commission head for Donald Trump, big golf buddy of Donald Trump. That one I wasn't that surprised by because Jay, I may not like his politics, but I'm not going to question his credentials or his background to run that office, especially given the other. And before I get flamed by my friends in Las Vegas, I'm going to tell Adam they like to pronounce it Nevada.
Oh, Nevada, I apologize. I apologize
Having
about that.
spent time
But
there and litigated cases there, I quit because yes, guys on the East Coast like you and me, we grew up in Nevada, but I know it's Nevada. So I just wanted before I get Popok, you let Adam say Nevada. I'm like, okay, just everybody relax. All right,
well, Reno's a beautiful city. I'll make it
that's
up
right.
to them by telling them that.
That's right. And interesting, just because I think people come to All Rise News and Legal AF. By the way, that's a good point. Round bubble up on the left. Subscribe to both Adams, All Rise News, and here on Legal AF. And if you can swing it to a paid subscription, I think it's $7 or $8 a month, you'll get some amazing content, including these live Substacks that we'll be doing in the future. Take that moment for us. But we also have some oddities going on because the judge that's going to be ruling about Alina Habba is not a New Jersey federal judge, just as the judge that's about to rule, and I think against the Trump administration, about their motion to disqualify the entirety of the Maryland federal bench is not a Maryland federal judge. You want to just touch on those oddities here?
Right. Well, I mean, I think the oddity of oddities is the fact that we're talking about the DOJ trying to disqualify the entire District of Maryland bench. The fact
Sorry.
that a different judge is presiding over that seems reasonable if you're trying to disqualify the entire District of Maryland bench. But just think about how over the rainbow we are. I mean, really, when I've seen motions to disqualify all of the judges of the district. They're usually scrawled in handwritten prose, kind of crazy
Right.
language. It's
Crayon.
crayon. It's not
Right.
usually on Department of Justice letterhead.
Sorry, that's a very good point. It's
So
usually letters cut out of magazines, right? Right.
all of us who have worked covering the courts have seen pro se motions like that. You laugh, you maybe show it to your colleague, you go about and have a nice day. Now it's happening on Department of Justice letterhead. So Judge Brand from, I believe, Middle District of Pennsylvania
Yeah.
is presiding over the motion with Alina Habba. Sometimes you have judges sitting by designation, especially when something that is being decided. You have, of course, in Habba's case, the District of New Jersey judges rejected her
The
application.
entirety of the federal bench rejected her extension, right?
And it makes sense. Now we have to the reason they rejected her that we have to remember the timeline here. Her case against Mayor Baraka of Newark spectacularly collapsed. Her legal team was dressed down in the kind of language you rarely hear from federal judges about, remember, your obligation is to the Constitution, to justice itself. It's not to your political agenda. It was excoriating
You must
language.
do better, he said to
You
them.
must do better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he went on, there was a hot mic moment that was reported in the local press in New Jersey that apparently Baraka said, wow, the judge really ripped her a new one. And that
So true.
was a big black eye for the office of the
Yeah.
District of New Jersey. And the judges noticed it and they rejected her application. So now, whether she is a legitimate appointee of the District of New Jersey is being decided outside of the district. It's happening with Judge Brand in Pennsylvania. And I remember reading one report. He said that he's presiding over the case for his sins. That no one wants this hot potato case.
And then in Maryland, the Trump administration had a very rough oral argument yesterday or the day before, in which the judge was like, "I'm sorry, because you don't like a ruling from one of the judges, you're going to move to disqualify the entirety of the Maryland federal bench." Once you frame it that way, it's hard to recover when you're an oral advocate. It's funny. I just interviewed. It's going up later today. AG of New Jersey, the Attorney General of New Jersey, Matt Blacken, and Rob Bonta, who you've interviewed as well. I had them together to talk about the new filing in Rhode Island yesterday about 21 states and the District of Columbia getting together to try to get all the billions of dollars that are supposed to go to victims of crimes under a Victim Crime Act that was passed in 1982 by Ronald Reagan and that Congress, bipartisan ways, and Donald Trump trying to victimize victims again by cutting off the flow of dollars administered by the Department of Justice because they want those blue states to play ball on sanctuary cities and immigration policy. And so they fought. And I said to them, you're getting together that I call them the Gang of 22, 23, which is the Democratic attorneys general in the United States that are fighting hard for democracy right now. It's really the governors like Gavin Newsom. It's the 23 blue attorney generals. They're doing it, right, along with the public interest groups, ACLU, Democracy Forward, Democracy Now, and all of that. And I said, you get your group together, and I'm sure there's overlap with personnel on all your 50 cases that you've now filed. But aren't you running into the same counterparties, on the other side? Aren't you running into the same, hold on, I'm getting a call. You can tell this is live. Aren't you running into the same team of DOJ lawyers? And aren't they like beleaguered and downtrodden? There's very few of them because, they fired all the Department of Justice. They're not funding them. They're not. So I'm sure he said, and AG, AG Plotkin from New Jersey said, yeah. And they look like they want to stop making these arguments in court because they're losing 90% of the time to the attorneys general case. I mean, they've had fit 90% of the time, and they're running the same arguments. I mean, you and I could do it. Did you ever do debate in high school or college?
I did, absolutely.
Okay. What kind of debate did you do? What style?
I did just I forget the style, like Baylor.
Yeah, we did like, it was like Lincoln Douglas or extemporaneous or whatever. And we always went up against a couple of times Bronx Science, which in New York in high school was like a powerhouse debate team at one time. But they used to run, in order to win, all sorts of crazy effing arguments, especially or debate arguments when they knew they were losing. And they had them in these little, when I was a kid, they carried around little index cards, like it was a, what do you call it, a recipe card box.
Yeah.
And they had all, not digital, and they had all their argument. They pull them out, like the nuclear war and greenhouse gas if you legalize prostitution, something like that. And they run these crazy effing arguments, but we had to be ready for them. The Bronx Science, and that's what's going on with the Department of Justice. So they run the same arguments. You don't have any jurisdiction, judge, over us because because President Trump has declared a war an enemy incursion, a national disaster, a national security issue, and you can't even review what he does. And every judge is like, no, that's not how law works. That's not how the checks and balance work. No, you don't get that level of deference automatically just because this guy declared it to be a national security issue. But that's how they start every effing argument. And
Right.
then,
And it's
which
usually the high ranking folks. It's
right,
not
and you
the,
lose
it's not,
instant credibility because look,
right.
I'm an advocate, right? I've tried 30 cases or more, or including appellate cases up to high levels of appeal. And you can't lose your credibility by leading with your weakest argument. I mean, that if I had to make that argument, it would be like number 4 towards the or in the middle, buried somewhere, because we always argue from primacy and recency, right? And so you stick the loser argument in the middle. No, they lead with it. They lead with their chins,
Mm. Right.
and then it go, and
And,
I
and
said, yeah, good.
And it's interesting because those particular cases, the nice crime victims' money that you have, wouldn't it be a shame if something happened to it? I mean, how low can you go? There's the Trump administration using various points of leverage to strong arm states, primarily blue states, to complying with their immigration agenda, often against their own laws and policies. There are, that's saying either you violate the laws passed by the people of your states, or we're going to yank funding that Congress appropriated meant to benefit crime victims, sexual assault victims, domestic violence victims.
A lot of women. It's a lot of
Yeah,
women victims.
right.
Yeah.
And they've used other points of leverage. It's been education funding, healthcare funding, social services, and it's part of the mix. And a lot of those cases were brought by those two AGs, Bonta, Platkin. There are more than 30 cases. Now, no wonder the DOJ is exhausted. They're
Absolutely.
sending
No,
the
it's
same
50. They
guys.
got to 50 already.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
And it's not surprising because you have that same playbook happening again and again, where the Trump administration is taking money appropriated by Congress that's not supposed to be under his control, and he's using it as leverage for immigration agenda. And I
Is anybody shocked by this? We've got a judge sexual abuser, or as Judge Kaplan called him, technically a rapist, in the Oval Office, who was convicted of 34 felony counts, whose company was convicted of 19 felony counts, um, who has a long history of sexual abuse of women, who have taken the stand under oath and said that, who have made the allegations in reporting. And of course, this is the president that is going to victimize the victim all over again and have no respect for the rule of law. And holding something hostage, this is right out of we saw it with Zelensky in the first term. I'm not gonna give you the $450 million of military aid and other aid Congress has approved for you on the famous phone call, infamous impeached phone call, unless you open up a prosecution against the Biden family.
All right, one trick pony, and that trick is extortion. No, you have
Right. It's a terrible trick.
you have that really. I've interviewed a couple of the attorneys general who's brought these cases in their capacities as the leading law enforcement official of their state, and I ask. Has a Republican attorney general ever joined you? Because there are some issues. One of those cases was birthright citizenship. Now, there must be people in red states, blue states, every state, who don't have this extreme vision of rewriting the 14th Amendment. There's a spectrum here. Never once has there been that cross partisanship in that direction. I have heard an attorney general from Democratic attorney general say,
Oh, yeah.
yes, I opposed this policy that I didn't agree with from President Biden because of XYZ. And when I ask them if that's ever during this administration crossed paths in the other direction, hasn't happened.
Hey, think about that for our audience. We got a great audience here. We're going to hit about 900 before this is over. Hit the subscribe button. It's up on the top left. We made it easy. Hit the button, Legal AF. Adam Classfeld, All Rise News. If you can swing it, a paid membership is what keeps this content coming to you. But we think about it. There's 23 blue attorneys general. I hate to call them blue and red because they represent the people of a state, but they are Democratic appointed or Democratic elected. That doesn't mean their governor is Democratic, because in some of them, their governors are not Democratic, or even their state house is Democratic, but they are Democrat. Now, that group, and I interviewed the head of that group, DAGA, the Democratic Attorneys General Organization. Think about that. 23 attorneys general are working hard and caring for, as chief law enforcement officers, the people of their state. And 27 are not. So people ask, what does an attorney general do? Well, if you're in the 27 states I just identified, not much, because they're not working for you, because you will benefit from the policies. But now, because of the way the Supreme Court has ruled on nationwide injunctions, it's a little bit of a flip of a coin, whether the 50 lawsuits brought by the 23 are going to benefit in a free riding, free loading situation, the other 27 states. Now, I'm not blaming the states because their attorney general is MAGA or doesn't politically want to take on Donald Trump and join with, appropriately, which he should or she should, join with the Democrats. And it used to be they could free ride, like, well, we'd really like to get that funding for our victims in our state, but I can't sign that pleading. But I'll get it because the judge will issue a nationwide injunction or a declaration and it'll benefit. But they can't play that game any longer because even though it was a little bit murky from the Supreme Court decision about birthright citizenship, states bringing cases may be able to lead to nationwide injunctions as opposed to this class action injunction clunky mechanism that we're now left with. By states, it's not that clear. And, it's like, it was like one paragraph, in a 2-paragraph decision. So there's not a lot of tea leaves to read here.
The bright side of that, sorry to interrupt.
No, you didn't interrupt.
In the birthright citizenship case, we've seen evidence of it working in both directions, where you have both class action getting complete relief and these attorney general cases in at least that particular instance where judges have found this is necessary for complete relief because we can't have a situation where your state's residents are not citizens if they move with their newborn to a different state. That's not full relief. So,
yeah.
but you're right.
And Trump hasn't appealed those. Trump has not. The reason we're not talking, you and I aren't talking about a birthright citizenship emergency application to the United States Supreme Court is because Donald Trump, despite having injunctions brought against him, both the class action style and the nationwide injunction style, depending upon the judge, because there's 5 different judges dealing with this issue, he hasn't brought the appeal. And so these injunctions have been holding the ring for us. And that's why we don't talk about babies being born as we're doing this live Substack who are being born on U.S. soil and having their citizenship challenged. Because that's another example. When people ask me, why does it matter if the Supreme Court? Because we're winning 90% otherwise. And that's where the cases are stopping. And they're not all being appealed. But before I leave my point, my other point is, since that Supreme Court decision, the red states attorney general method of free riding behind the blue states is sort of over, or could be over, because they used to be like, well, I won't sign the pleading, but we'll at least get the money because the blue states are out doing it for me. I'm not sure about that anymore. I asked AG Bonta and AG Plotkin during the interview. Everybody will see it on Legal AF YouTube later this afternoon. What do you think? And they said, I don't know. I mean, we're fighting for our 23 states, our 21 states and District of Columbia to get victim funds, but I'm not sure the shape of the order. Is it just going to be the parties in front of them? Or is it going to also inure to the benefit of these red states? But that's been the calculus the red states have been able to get away with, which is not surfing behind, the drafting behind the blue state agreeing with them in principle, but not willing politically to step out and fight for their citizenship. That we have a divided country. I don't know if people realize that. So we have
I hadn't noticed that one.
reproductive rights, women's right. Women are second class citizen in the states that you and I just identified.
Right.
So Adam, we're at the end. I mean, I hate to do it. I think our audience is telling us not to be at the end. You and I are getting together more regularly now, and it's a great thrill. What do you want to leave the audience with as a final note here on the way out?
Pay attention for the end of this week. There's going to be a lot of news breaking. It's going to be finally the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We'll see what follows that, whether he's swept up into immigration detention immediately after that, or whether he gets to spend some time in Maryland, the home state where his family lives. There's also stay tuned for developments on the Epstein docket. There are a number of cases, and the DOJ is supposed to start sharing material with the Congress on that day. The Senate, seven Democratic senators have also demanded information under federal law. Lawrence O'Donnell went into that last night about the specific provision that they cited. So there are multiple points of push for these documents, and I think that there's going to be news breaking by the end of this week.
You heard it. You heard it here first. Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News. That's what he's known for, being in the courtrooms and breaking news. He's with Legal AF YouTube now, regular contributor there for all of his video work. He and I have committed to doing once a week, at least, live Substack here. We got a great audience, over 1,000 people overlapping between our two audiences. If you're already subscribed, we thank you for being part of our audience, and paid subscribers pay the bills for Adam to get on the planes to go to the courtrooms and pay for our production and our content. If you if you can do paid subscriptions, terrific. At least subscribe so you'll get reminders about these kind of live Substacks. Adam, I'll see you later in the week, maybe on Friday.
See you soon.
All right, thank you very much. Bye all. Legal
Thank
AF
you.
and All
Bye-bye.
Rise News out.